Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Welcome to episode 421 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight we will be talking about the Raven Awards from this past Sunday. Again, shout out to everyone who was able to make it. To everyone who was able to participate either through nominating, voting, all of the above, smashing the like button, sharing it with other people. So seriously, thank you for making it one of the most successful Raven Awards that we have had in the 5 years that we have been doing it. Also, we will be talking tonight about a recent cut of the Hobbit trilogy from Peter Jackson. The Hobbit trilogy, which I was not a fan of at all and thought it was just abysmal for so many different reasons and just a far falling away from the tremendous work he had done on the Lord of the Rings franchise. But someone on the channel, shout out to Hardwick, as you all know, we tend to have a back and forth banter typically, but he recommended a fan edit of the film where it actually brought all three movies together into what amounts to 2 Blu-ray discs and about 50% of each of the movies getting cut. And let me just say, I'll get more into detail about it, but much better than the actual trilogy itself. And we will also talk a little bit about Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre, which I just dropped a review on, a car video review on earlier today. Was able to make my way out to Cleveland, Tennessee, since unfortunately none of the theaters in my neck of the woods have any showings prior to 2 or 3 o'clock, which doesn't work for me because that puts me right up against the time I normally have to pick up a baby Thor. And anyway, because though I was able to hang out at it's called the chain's called a UEC. It's like, I think it's like a regional chain, UEC theaters. Very, very good experience overall, and very much enjoyed the film. And I think I can finally say there is now a great movie in 2023 that I feel is most likely going to end up in my top 5 for the year, with Guy Ritchie once again delivering. So we'll talk about that and plenty of other stuff. Again, thank you for being here. Before we get further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, loud that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button if you're watching over there, as we are multi-streaming to all of the various platforms. And thank you for joining us this evening. Let's go ahead and say hello to the people in the chat. First, Master of Gaming, who was here pretty early. What's going on? Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, how about a hockey player? How is it going? Welcome back. Laura, the Modern Major General story, mod on the channel, and the Modern Major General, don't mess with her. Gmonkey76, hail to you. Mike Jackson, hail to you. By the way, Laura, I do want to give her a shout out because someone had noticed that there's the DS9 model right there, and she very politely in private messages reminded me that she actually sent that to me. So I wanted to correct that. I'd given the credit to Bruce. Bruce sent me some stuff and some models that are up here on my bookshelf, which are also amazing and awesome. So shout out to both of them. But for the model, if anyone is watching who had asked about that the other day, again, shout out to Laura. I always want to try to give the proper shout outs when I possibly can. But both Bruce and Laura are fantastic. And speaking of the man, Bruce, what's going on? Welcome back to the chat. Forever Sci-Fi hanging out. Mr. Roy, hope everything is going well. Laura, are you rowing? Are you rowing? No, I'm not rowing. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Great Wuda, what's going on? Welcome back to the chat. Carl, what's going on? Hail to you. Bruce, thank you very much. Raven Awards over the Oscars. Yeah, Oscars did see a 12%, I think was the number, increase in viewership from last year, but is still, I think, the 3rd or 4th lowest viewed Oscars of all time. So, yeah, they were able to get a few extra viewers. My guess is, if I had to take a guess, it would not surprise me if the main factor, and I know this might seem kind of out of nowhere, I would not be surprised if the primary reason for it was actually the best song category, because RRR got nominated and won for best song in a movie. At least that's what I believe I saw online. And I would not be surprised if the Bollywood fans, the Bollywood culture that is a part of American culture, as again, theaters near me will show a lot of Bollywood movies, and I know that there are a lot of Indian immigrants as well who support those movies, and is the reason why there is such a large demand for them sometimes at these theaters. Would not surprise me if that might actually be the reason why there was at least part of the increase from previous years. That's just my own guess. Obviously, I have no data to back that up, but take it as an educated guess. King Kane Rumsky hanging out over on Rumble says, I got a Raven Awards hangover. Yeah, we had a massive 3-hour plus show, but we had a ton of fun. So we'll do a little bit of a debrief, right? Some last comments, some last thoughts about the Ravens, and final word on the Ravens. We'll go through just some of the general categories. And again, I'm very happy with the vast majority of the results. Again, obviously, Top Gun Maverick swept most of the categories. I think it only lost to one in which it was actually nominated, and that was for Best Visual Effects, which went to the bane of my existence, which is Avatar 2. Really, the Avatar franchise is the bane of my existence, but I digress. And it was a lot of fun. So again, thank you all also for making Sunday evening's show a ton of fun. Bryant Bart says, can't believe Jeremy won Shill of the Year. I can. Seeing that most people were showing a lot of interest in it simply for that one category and were very clear about who they voted for, it's not a surprise at all. Basically, if you paid attention. Steven, what's going on, good sir? I already see you've asked several questions. Any big plans for your fam for Easter spring break? Well, here's the thing, Steven. First off, I do get triggered by that because no, there's Easter and Easter break, and then there's spring break. They are two different things. And if a school has their spring break over Easter, guess what? It's still Easter break. Now, if it's a public school, they're clearly trying to do the whole nonsensical separate religion from, basically try to put religion in a corner somewhere. When in reality, it's like, okay, why else would you be taking off right now if other than the fact that there are people, a huge portion of people, in fact, in our country, probably even in your school, that are going to be going to Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, celebrating Easter. Again, it just boggles my mind. I'm currently in spring break, though, right? Because spring break is its own thing if it's separated from Easter. If it happens over Easter, it's Easter break. Because why are you out? Reason for the season, Easter. It's just like when people say, oh, I'm out on a holiday for December. No. You're out on Christmas break. You're out on Christmas break. Come on. We're better than that. We are better than that. Anyway, but yeah, I'm currently having my spring break right now, and I'm planning on seeing some movies. I've been watching some 1883. I'm about 5 episodes in and really enjoying it so far. Really do like the time frame and the actors in it as well. As I mentioned today, I was actually able to go see a movie, and I'm going to try and go see another one Thursday and Friday since I'll have the time this week. And the UEC theater has the showing starting around noon for a couple of movies that I still want to see. I might be able to see Cocaine Bear, and then this Thursday there is another release coming out. I think it's Shazam 2 coming out this week, which I don't really have at the top of my list anymore. I remember I really liked the first Shazam film, and I was really excited for the sequel, and then the trailers came out, and I was like, I'm not really excited for it anymore. So I might try to go see that early showing on Friday then. Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing. Kimberly G, what is going on? Hail to you. Alice McCarthy says, howdy, old, and how's it going? I'm late. I just got home. My wife made me buy Cocaine Bear. Made you buy Cocaine Bear? Come on now. Scott McKenzie, what is going on? Welcome back to the chat. Steven says, Scream became a big success without Campbell. You think Jenna Ortega will take over the franchise? Well, here's the thing. Again, people typically are not going to see movies anymore because of the people in them. Sometimes it's a motivating factor, right? There are some movies where, for instance, for me, I saw Operation Fortune because it's a Guy Ritchie film featuring Jason Statham, having a supporting role from Hugh Grant, and a plethora of other people who I like seeing on screen together. So, again, there are times when that will happen. But the reason why Scream is a success, and when you say big success, if we're talking about profits versus budget, when you're spending very little on your projects, that's not really saying a whole lot when you're able to get sub $200 million, I think, is where that film probably will end up worldwide, because that's where all of the recent ones have been. Keep in mind, people are going to try to say that Scream 6 is doing so well at the box office, and don't get me wrong, it's making its money back and it's going to make some profits. But that film peaked. That film peaked during the second and third installment. Right, so far it's made $70 million. So $200 million you're looking at as kind of like a max at this point, because it's not going to make a whole lot of money internationally. You do have more competition coming out with, wide releases basically every week up until, I think, at least April, or maybe even going through April into summertime. So it's not hard for that film to make its money back. The thing is, though, they're spending very little money on those movies, again, $30 million or less. And then because they have a dedicated fan base that just likes the concept of Ghostface and likes the concept of slasher films, they're going to show up for it for almost any reason. You add in some original characters, any of the original characters, and you're going to get people who are interested in it for that very reason. So just because one actress is not in it does not mean, oh, this person's taking over, or, oh, this is what's going on. No. What it means is that they could make 20 of those movies for around the same amount of money and probably make their money back every single time. Anyway, let's see. Laura says, I had to explain not to my coworkers. Oh, you should have pointed them to watch RRR. Again, I know it's a long film and it's not everyone's cup of tea, but that sequence in the film is a lot of fun. Bruce says, I thought people might have tuned into the Oscars just to hear about what they would say about Will Smith. Yeah, and again, that's another factor. I think there's a lot of factors that are why that film, or why the Oscars are up this year. Because it's clearly not because people are interested in movies again, right? Box office helps to show that actually pretty clearly. People can talk about the numbers for Avatar and even Top Gun Maverick, but those are more so the exceptions than the rules. When you look at the vast majority of films with a general release, most films are barely breaking even, making small amounts of profit, or losing money. So unless you're a big tentpole film, basically, you don't have much of a chance. And even if you are a big tentpole film, a la Ant-Man 3, I think that it shows ultimately that a lot of fans are getting tired of really bad, poorly told stories. So yeah, I think that you probably could point to the fact that you had films like Top Gun Maverick nominated, maybe. Lady Gaga always can bring in some numbers, I'm sure. And that's the other thing, too, is that when it comes to those ratings, is it talking about people who watched the entire show? Is it just talking about people who watched for a certain length of time? Is it including all cable subscriptions? Is it including people who have YouTube TV? Like, there's a lot of questions that I have as far as what the actual numbers are, and also retention. On YouTube, we get a lot of data and analytics about retention. I would love to find out what the retention rate on the Oscars actually was. The Morak, what's going on? Welcome back. Steven says, I doubt Ant-Man will get their money back. Just came back from seeing Puss in Boots, good movie, and went over to check Ant-Man, and damn, it was empty. Yeah, again, it hasn't been doing well from the very beginning. I mean, that I could have told you from the beginning, because remember, what were they running with? What was the mainstream box office media running with? Oh, it's the highest grossing of the franchise. And I was like, I say nay. That's a very, deceptive headline for several reasons. Again, one, it just ignores inflation, and two, it ignores the fact that even though the number might be highest, even with adjusted for inflation numbers, it doesn't actually equate to ticket sales. Add on top of that a 70% drop in its second week, and you have the film now where it probably won't even break $500 million, and if it does, it will barely do so. And that, on my chart, which is a more conservative estimate, and that's something I might actually update my chart to include a range for the break even, since I know there are some people who are using metrics that are like, my metric is a film needs to make 2.5 times the budget to break even. And that's the standard that I've used now for a long time. But I might just say, hey, but it could be very well as much as, because of, again, new age, new marketing strategies, because of the way theaters work after the pandemic, new deals, etc. Maybe it could be for some films as much as 3 times its budget to make its money back. And I think that ultimately would, maybe be a fair way. But I'll have to look at it. Victor Fontaine, what's going on? Good sir. Welcome back to the chat. Yeah, it's still down. Again, that's why it's still like the third lowest of all time. Master of Gaming, who won the Ravens bowling? Well, why weren't you watching the Raven Awards, Master of Gaming, is the real question, and why haven't you watched it since? I know it's a 3-hour show, but I did announce the winners at the very end of it. But Jeremiah Farrer was the one who had won and got in first place, and then General Wingster actually got second place. The highest score was 219 from Jeremiah. So shout out. I know Jeremiah said he was going to be out of town this week, but Jeremiah, if you're watching this now or later, I did send an email out with the list of films that are available for the giveaways. Great Widow says, the Raven Maverick Awards was great last Sunday. Yeah, it definitely was a runaway show for Top Gun Maverick, no doubt about it. Morak, what's going on? Great job with the Raven Awards. Thank you. I appreciated it. Virtual Fireball, what is going on? Orange Chat, I am late, so sorry. No problem at all, man. Take your time. Take your time. Crisco, any thoughts on Little Mermaid live-action trailer? Looks like a visual and tonal dumpster fire, but I think Halle Bailey might pull off Ariel despite the controversy. Well, I would agree with that last statement only in one degree. I think that the trailer showed that she has a voice. And I think anyone who would say otherwise is just trying to find more things to complain about or criticize beyond what is already, like, here's the thing. When I saw the official live action trailer, a couple things came to mind. One, good Lord, this CGI is terrible. And two, I am so not interested in watching this because, oh my gosh, what kind of design is that for Sebastian? What were you thinking with that design for Sebastian? So I would actually say the biggest issue is not who they cast as Ariel. It's actually the fact that the film looks like a complete dumpster fire of a CGI fest film. And then also the character designs look terrible too. So anyway, Forever Sci-Fi says, we campaigned hard for Jeremy. And it was very clear if you were in the chats. Yeah, Jeremy was getting a lot of support for Shill of the Year. And hey, he won. Joey Horn, what is going on? Welcome back. Thanks for being a member on the channel. Orange Eye Reviews is indeed telling everybody the rules. Don't spam. I fall sometimes 20 to 30 minutes behind in the chat, but I do like when y'all tag me because it lets me know you're trying to get my attention, and then I'm able to highlight your comments. Laura says, just saying, I love you all. I might be in jail soon because the guy next to me in the library keeps taking phone calls. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, please don't hurt him. I would say it's better for you just to go and report him to the librarian. I feel like most librarians are going to be like, oh, I got this. Kincaid Rumsky said, nobody puts religion in a corner. Yes, especially here. Miss Minnesota fan says, I saw the Little Mermaid trailer and it looked awful. It does. And again, I think the more valid criticisms are the CGI and the design for Sebastian. Those two, I think, are worse than the casting. Because as I mentioned, right, the casting was clearly done with racial motivation. And anyone who says otherwise or tries to say you can't imply that, it's like, I'm sorry, have you paid attention to all of the Disney releases? Have you paid attention to anything going on in the culture war? If you haven't, then you need to shut your mouth because you don't know what you're talking about. But when you're looking at this stuff all the time and you're seeing this stuff happen in real time and you're seeing a consistent pattern of behavior, you're able to say with a lot of confidence, no, it was done not because she was the best fit for Ariel. I mean, they could have literally picked the woman who portrayed the character on Broadway, who has a brilliant voice, who actually played Christine Daae in on Broadway in Phantom of the Opera with a phenomenal voice, who looks perfectly like the part. Yes, you could argue she's a little bit older than the part, but again, you could have gone in that direction. There were plenty of people that you could have gone with that would have actually looked the part. Bruce says, I'm picking up my John Wick 4 ticket tomorrow. Nice! Very cool. Yeah, I'm definitely excited for John Wick to come out. Because I think it's not this week. I think it's next week, if I'm not mistaken. Steven says, how long do you think it'll take Disney to remove the comment section for Little Mermaid new trailer? I give it by Friday. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their history is for the other trailers. Just give me 1 second. Something fell. I have River literally by my feet, and so anytime she crawls into the space by my feet, which is not a lot, ever since I moved my room, especially because there's like a thing sticking out from the wall that makes it harder to stretch my feet. But she has to be, of course, right there. And I love her. She's adorable. But every time she does, she'll like knock things over, and I've got movies stacked on the ground and everything like that. So I don't know their history of removing comment sections for the previous trailers, so it's hard for me to really say. Zine Waters, Odin, how did Baby Thor get so big? Hasn't it only been a couple of months? Has it really been that long? Again, he's 2.5. He is 2.5, not months, years. Kincaid and Rumsky over on Rumble, thanks for tagging, says, what happens first? Hollywood ends or the box office numbers start to get better? Oh, man. I don't think either would actually happen, because I think Hollywood is going to be around in some iteration. We are already seeing its massive decline. Keep in mind, despite the thoughts that I have about the Oscars, a film that was edited by people that are not professionally trained and train themselves through YouTube videos won Best Editing at the Oscars. So what that tells me is, hey, wait a minute. This is a clear sign. And I think you saw a sign of this even earlier when they released in that, season 2 of The Mandalorian, where they had like the Luke reveal and everyone was going crazy and everyone was so excited. And there I was saying, this is really, really bad effects. Again, you can try and say, it's Luke. No, it's not. It's a computer-generated image that looks terrible. It took only a couple of hours for someone with their own computer to do a better job than what a entire visual effects team getting paid whatever amount or having access to whatever kinds of technology they have access to. And so I think that, in addition to this most recent win by Everything Everywhere, really shows that, yeah, there can be success outside of the Hollywood structure and outside of the typical Hollywood system. I think ultimately, going back, I don't think the numbers are going to the numbers are going to slightly improve over time. It's just that more and more people are going to start to fall back into routines. It's never going to get back to the previous levels, though. Never going to get back. Keely Chow, how are you, Thor and wife, doing? We're doing fine. Thank you very much, Keely, for asking. I appreciate that. All right, chat jumped at me like it always does. And again, if you have a comment or question, just put @Odin at the beginning of your comment. Master Gaming says, Operation Fortune is hated by most mainstream critics. I'm glad I'm not the only one that liked it. I'm glad you also liked it. Yeah, and that's kind of weird seeing that in the film, and it's not really much of a plot point. There's like a couple of references, and they're mostly shrugged off, which I appreciated. I mean, one of the members of the team is a really smart female running ops. Oh, played brilliantly by Aubrey Plaza, by the way. And I'll get more into my thoughts about that. But it's just amazing to me, the amount of hypocrisy coming from mainstream critics. And let's just say, if that movie had a woke message to it, I guarantee you the scores would be better, or at the very least, the reviews would be a lot kinder, because the film is fantastic. Again, one of my favorite films of the year. Kimberly G, I'll need someone to tell me when I can slip out of John Wick 4 to pee. I mean, it's going to be a long film. I know there are apps. There's one app called Run Pee that will actually, when you start the timer when your film starts, it'll actually let you know when the best times to go would be and what you missed. So basically, it'll go through like the slow moments of the film and then catch you up with whatever it is that you missed when you get back. Master Gamer says, actually, I saw the Ravens since 2020. Well, then, okay. Then why did you ask that question? Because if you actually then watched, you would have heard me announce the winners. See what I did there, Master of Gaming? I love you, man. But don't do the, actually, I've seen it since. Again, I literally announced it on Sunday. Steven says, we are halfway in March now. Has there been any movie 2023 that you consider to be a top 5? Bro, Steven, are you even listening? I mentioned it at the very beginning of the stream. I was like, I think I finally found one in my top 5. I feel like a lot of people aren't listening. I love y'all, but come on, open y'all's ears. Oh, man. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our first thing. So let's talk about the Ravens a little bit. So again, if you missed the Raven Awards, or if you weren't paying attention, if you want to find out the nominees and winners, you can check out my website, OMBReviews.com. Head over to the Raven Awards tab, and you can either click on it, or you can hover over it and click on 2022. And you'll have, first off, a direct link to be able to watch it on YouTube. It is available also, or should be available on Odyssey and Rumble as well. Once you make it live on YouTube, I have it so that it transfers over there too. But we had a lot of fun. And I was very happy to see the GIFs work. No copyright issues whatsoever, which was very, very nice. Kincaid and Rumsky, I see what you did there, you troll. He says, "What did you say? Sorry, I must have missed it." I love you, Kincaid and Rumsky. You're awesome. But anyway, I love that the GIFs were able to, again, even though it's showing almost the same exact imagery that I showed, because there's no audio, I guess. Copyright is such a silly, silly thing. But that was pretty much the start of the giant run that Top Gun Maverick had at the Ravens, winning, best quote. Stunt work also went to Top Gun Maverick as well. You also had the animated feature, which went to Puss in Boots, which I know got a lot of love and a lot of support. I do plan on putting the charts somewhere on here in the future as well. NPC of the year went to Frost. Again, very heavy Friday Night Tights support for her. And I think that all of us were in agreement, though, that even though she definitely, and all of them were deserving of the award, when it came to probably who are the actual NPCs of the year, Mark Ruffalo, Rob Reiner are definitely at the top of that list. Visual effects went to Avatar, one of the only positive things that happened to Avatar this past weekend. Best cinematography, of course, went to Top Gun Maverick. It was beautiful, phenomenal. SJW screenwriters went to Bros, the only thing that Bros won. And hey, more people probably watched the announcement of the Raven Awards for Bros than actually saw the movie. Best director, Joseph Kosinski. Again, phenomenal movie for Top Gun Maverick. Best fight scene action sequence, obviously, came down to the final trench run of Top Gun Maverick. It was just beautiful. I mean, even just from this GIF, you're like, oh my goodness, this just looks fantastic, right? Seeing the actors experiencing the G-forces the way that they did. Again, look at that. That's just phenomenal. It's fantastic. Breakthrough performance. There was some controversy over this one. A lot of controversy over this one. But Miles Teller was able to pull this one out. I know a lot of people were thinking maybe Austin Butler or Ke Huy Quan for this. But again, Top Gun Maverick had that wave effect going on there. Worst writing went to Thor: Love and Thunder. I don't think that was really a surprise to most people. Most iconic film went to Top Gun Maverick. I mean, it's most people's favorite movie of the year, so that makes complete sense to me. Most pointless character went to Riri Williams. Shield of the Year, of course, went to Jeremy Geese and Gamers. We got to roast him a little bit as well. Still don't have any comment from him on the matter, but I might have to wait until Friday Night Tights to get his thoughts on it. For the critically acclaimed piece of garbage film, Woman King, very well deserved there. Overrated film went to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, also very, very well deserved. Underrated film went to The Northman. Again, Northman had a lot of fans and finally was able to get a positive for it. Though personally, I think The Menu is truly the most underrated film of the year. Bullet Train I'd put up there too. But hey, I can at least respect Northman getting this one. The best pointless requel, whatever it is you want to call it, is Maverick. The worst was a tie. One of the few times in history, Disney's Pinocchio, Thor: Love and Thunder, both were seen as the worst. Best low budget went to Everything Everywhere All at Once for $14 million. Again, happy to see this at least get something because it was a phenomenal film. Best story in film, also controversial, went to Top Gun Maverick. I like the story. I just don't think it's the best one. Lifetime Achievement went to Brendan Fraser. Again, very excited for that. By the way, obviously the videos have been making the rounds of social media, and it was really heartwarming to see him. And also Ke Huy Quan's speeches were great at another award show that, again, was the only positive things about them were those moments, really. The worst film of the year, The Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, Excellence Craft World Building, went to Thor: Love and Thunder. Well deserved there. And then best movie of the year, of course, went to Top Gun Maverick, and was able to share with you all the final ranking. And yeah, it's just, I still can't get over the fact that Everything Everywhere was at a 4.2 for its rating out of 8, and then The Northman just beat it out by 0.003. Again, you all know where my vote would have gone between those two, but hey, those are how the numbers shaked out, and Top Gun Maverick was, of course, the clear winner with a 2.7 rating. So phenomenal work. Had a lot of fun with it, and again, you can find more information about this, and you can also look at previous years, and I think probably I will have to wait until over the summer when I have the time and the brain power to actually do this, but I think I'm going to go through the Raven Awards from previous years and try to create something similar, because for all the other years I have something that looks like this, which I mean it's fine, But also, look at this. From last year's Ravens, Spider-Man No Way Home won pretty easily with a 3.45, but still nothing compared to the 2.7 that was made by Top Gun Maverick. Again, last year was definitely a rough year for several of the films, but we had some pretty good ones too. And if you want to, again, see what we have going all the way back to the very first Raven Awards back in 2018, which was won by Infinity War, and this was before we did the full, the actual scoring system. And or at least maybe I have it somewhere, and I was never able to find it. But yeah, I mean, that's when Wrinkle in Time won for worst film. Oh man, that film was garbage. And again, very similar to Top Gun Maverick, it also won original story, though I think most of us were in agreement that Quiet Place had a better story. Even like a film like Upgrade. Isle of Dogs, man, I forgot about that. Also, Vader, Shards of the Past by Star Wars Theory actually ended up winning Best Low Budget. So yeah, a lot of things have changed since that first one, but this year was a lot of awesome experiences and a big success. All right, Hardwick, going back to the chat now. In your opinion, how does Operation Fortune compare to the last few Mission Impossible movies, and separately to Guy Ritchie's The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? Man from U.N.C.L.E. is much better than it needs to be, or has any right being, though I actually do, I enjoyed it. I didn't find Man from U.N.C.L.E. to be very rewatchable, though. So I think that Operation Fortune is better than that film by quite a bit. And then the Mission Impossible films, I do feel that those, for me at least, have fallen into that category too, where you see it the first time and you're just blown away by what they're able to do and what Tom Cruise is doing on screen, especially with the crazy effects. But ultimately, they're not nearly as memorable story-wise, character-wise. So I would personally say Operation Fortune, I think, is better. And it comes down to Guy Ritchie is just such a creative mind, and he's just been on a roll the last few years. You know, going back to The Gentleman, which was my favorite film of 2019 when it came out. Going back even The Wrath of Man, which was in my top 5 for 2021. And now, for Operation Fortune, that film absolutely is going to be somewhere, especially since there's not a lot of films I'm looking forward to. Probably will end up being in my top 5. Abomination over on Odyssey says, when are movies going to bring back intermissions at the 30 or 45 minute mark? Probably never, to be perfectly honest. It really comes down to time is money. If you add an intermission, it means that every screen is going to take up more time, meaning there are less show times you can have in that screen, and that means less tickets can be sold, and therefore that's why that probably won't ever happen. Also, most films don't need an intermission. You have films like John Wick 4, which are going to get a 3-hour release, and you have other films that have been 2.5 hour, 3 hours long, but you know, those are not the most common. The vast majority of films are either 2 hours or less. Zine Waters, I'm not a CGI snob, and even I'm starting to get critical of films these days. They're so bad. They really are. And you don't even have to be a CGI snob to see it. At this point, I think so many more people, especially as our TVs get better and as we start to get used to the same things over and over again, we're starting to realize, oh, there are some films that are doing much better things with less money. What's your excuse? You know, you look at any MCU film and then you compare it to some of the films that I've mentioned on this channel. Love and Monsters is one of those movies where you're like, wait, they were able to do that for only $30 to $40 million. Wait, what's this person's excuse for $200 to $250 million? It's ridiculous. Dan Crane says, "Hey, almighty Odin, ball game got canceled due to low temperature, so I'm able to join fellowship tonight on time. Day 21 of Lent. How about some Lent words of wisdom?" Dan Crane, well, thank you very much for being a member on the channel, and thank you for joining. I'm sorry to hear that the ball game got canceled, but all I would say is, hey, keep running the race. We are getting very, very close to the midway point this coming Sunday, the fourth Sunday in Lent, known as Laetare Sunday. And that's when the rose vestments are worn. That will be, again, it's usually seen as the halfway point, because and for me, I just see it as the last week before things start to, kind of get rolling, because after that you have Passion Sunday. I go by the traditional calendar, of course. Passion Sunday, Passion Week, and then after Passion Week you have Holy Week, the holiest week in the church's year. So it's it's amazing to me that we only have really just a few more weeks of Lent left. So I would say we're getting there. Whatever it is that you fasted from or abstained from, keep strong. Forever Sci-Fi just says, spam. Laura says, The Little Mermaid was so dark and gray, Snyder-like. Yeah, I wonder if Zack Snyder had anything to do with it. It would make a lot more sense. Kink and Rumsky over on Rumble, they should have that guy from Morbius say, it's Morbin time for intermission at movies. Well, if they did bring it back, and I don't think they are for the reasons I said, sure, why not? That'd be fun. It's the one thing that Jared Leto would get praised for. Kimberly G is agreeing with a comment or agreeing with something. Orange Hat says, I heard a report that The Whale was secretly an anti-Christian movie. Thoughts? It's the same. So as many of you all know, I'm very, very open about my faith. I'm a traditional Catholic. There was a video from a site that I actually, for the most part, enjoy. I actually support their work and what they do in the Catholic news sphere. And their main host went after Everything Everywhere All at Once, saying it was an anti-Eucharistic movie. And the way he tried to connect if you've seen the film, this black hole donut to the Eucharist, I was like, wait a minute, that is a huge stretch to try to make that kind of connection. We can talk about the moral problems in the story, because there are some. I mean, the way that they are able to basically jump between universes. They have to do some really crazy things, and some of them you're like, ugh. And we could talk about that. But when it comes to the film itself, I think it's a bit of an overreach in different ways. Now, for The Whale, I have actually said this in my review. I don't think it's necessarily an anti-Christian movie. I think that it's actually an anti-religion movie. And it's very clear in the way that the characters are treated. For instance, there's one character in the movie who is essentially a evangelist, someone who is meant to go around and spread the word, and he is treated in such a way, and you find out information about him, and basically it tries to paint religion in a very general and a very broad brush as an evil entity, that religion itself is evil and wrong. So I do think it is anti-religion. Now, a lot of that does have to do with Christianity, not Catholicism, but Christianity. So I can see why someone would say that it has an anti-Christian message, but ultimately it's much more an anti-religion message than it is an anti-Christian message. There are, of course, a lot of moral qualms within the story, and one of the reasons why I dislike the movie as much as I do is because there are no real consequences for him. I mean, some people might say, well, I mean, look at his health and he, look at the ending and all this other. But ultimately, it's about a guy who is so obsessed with himself that even up until the end, and I guess spoilers here, kind of, I think that people know, though, this is the way it's going to end to a certain degree. Up until the very end of his life, he is self-obsessed. Because what's the last thing he asks his estranged daughter to do? To read to him a story she wrote. And some are going to say, oh, but it's this beautiful moment of redemption. No, it's this moment of a guy who, again, throughout the movie, what does he have people do? Read him that so that he feels better, because it calms him down. So at the very end, he has his daughter reading this story, reading this paper that she wrote for him. It's not for her, it's for him. And then there's this showing, because it's Aronofsky, there's a showing of light, almost as if there's this redemption. It's like, what has he done to earn redemption? He has been self-obsessed and self-focused his entire life. He cares more about himself than anyone else, right? He abandons his family to pursue his own desires. He obviously gorges on food. Again, unhealthy self-love. And then all the way up until the very end, there's this self-obsession that exists. So yeah, it's very much an anti-religion film, I would say. And I really do believe that. Remember, I mentioned that in my review. Not everyone agreed, but if you look at it, it's kind of hard not to see. Crisco says, which is worse, MODOK or Sebastian? Well, we haven't seen Sebastian in the full movie yet, so for now I'm going to say MODOK. At least with MODOK, though, I can say this much. At least it's fun. Orange Eye Review says, my theater won't release John Wick 4 on time. I am not one to pull a Jack Sparrow, but puts on the pirate cap. Oh, no. Grey Widow says, John Wick Chapter 4 comes out on Thursday, March 24th. Yeah, next week. Keely Shao, in your opinion, who would be ideal to direct an original Phantom Menace disaster movie about what would happen if Gary started a solo nooner on time? I would say Critical Drinker, Razor Fist, or I'm going to give a shout out. I don't think he's been around for a while. At least he hasn't been around the chat for a while. But since he's a director by trade, at the very least, Rookie Critic. Shout out to Rookie Critic. All right. Let's see. Again, if you have a comment or question, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. Lets me know you're trying to get my attention. Laura says, Keely had a great idea to see if Chrissy will do an acceptance of Frosk's award. I might have to see if she will. That might be a fun thing for us to do on Friday Night Tights, though I know that she hates putting that wig on. Hardwick says, if Disney cared about proper casting for Ariel, they could have cast Haley Steinfeld. Young enough, singer, would look the part with a red dye hair. Here's the problem, though, Hardwick. You're taking the job away from another redhead. So I actually think you're still having a very similar problem that you did before, which is, and again, this is where I think the nuance has to be. Are people mad because of the skin color of Haley Bailey? Or is it because of the fact that she's not an actual redhead? I think that's actually a valid question. Anyway, Morak says, did I see right Sunday on the voting breakdown chart for movie of the year? Did RR have the most second place votes? Oh, that's actually a good question. I did not look to that. So let me see if I can find that out for you real quick. So that way, oh, it's because I'm logged into a different account. So I can't check that right now. But I mean, yeah, if that's what the chart indicated, then it could very well be the case. Jazz Pena says, ahoy, apologies for missing the Ravens. It's okay. Your homework is just to watch all 3 hours of the stream. And your time starts now. Gary Banjo says, I liked Cocaine Bear. Very gruesome. Okay. All right. Yeah, again, I might go check that out Thursday or Friday, depending on what things are there. Steven says, will you still be attending the Friday Night Tights regardless of what happens this past Friday? Why wouldn't I? Yeah, this just reminds me of something I mentioned. I think it was either last stream or Saturday. I appreciated the people that reached out to me prior to the show telling me not to go on, but don't. I'm a grown man. I'm an independent person. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it wasn't until what happened on stream that things got to a point that they had never gotten to before. Everything else prior to that was pretty much ballpark for things that I've heard from either like Az or Ryan or anyone else that we've had. As far as the actual like harshness of language and uncomfortableness, you know, and it's not even the most uncomfortable that I've ever actually even been up until the moment where it was like, okay, this is off the rails here. So yeah, I'm a part of Friday Night Tights. Why would I not show up? No one planned that except for Gavin himself. Let's see. Laura says, I thought The Whale did a great job of demonstrating the price of sins. And that's where I disagree though, because again, it would have had his daughter left. And I know that's a very dark ending, but then he is completely alone and he dies alone. That is the cost of and succumbing to the sins. Whereas, yes, it might show the effect of sin, but it also shows he doesn't learn anything. He has not learned anything from it. Why? Because, again, throughout the entirety of the movie, it's all about him, self-focus, and then at the very end, it's still about him. Greta Zenner, what's going on? Greta, hail to you. Greta, was sad not to see you in the chat for the Raven Awards this past Sunday. Gary Banjo Sandwich says, if you eat enough fried chicken, you get redemption, pretty much. Hardwick says, most of Darren Aronofsky's feature symbolism of themes from the Kabbalah, with Pi, the fountain, Noah being the most explicit. He has been quite open about this. And again, I don't really care at all about what he has to do or say about Kabbalah. All I can say is individual films themselves clearly has an anti-religion bias to it. Steven, do you have any additional special shows you will like to do? Do the Raven Awards, or is that that's my once a year thing. There might be a here or there, like an anniversary stream or a milestone stream, but that's the biggest one. I mean, it takes. I know that I kind of joke about it, like saying all the time I put into this PowerPoint. It actually did take me quite a bit to get everything working, because I was trying to make all of the GIFs work, and I had to make sure they were the correct size, because if they weren't the correct size, it overloaded the system. So that was a pain. But I only do that once a year. Some people have asked, could I do something like that for TV or for the Emmys? I just don't think I'd have the strength. I don't have the strength. King and Rumsky over on Rumble. I didn't see everything all at once, but it looked like the lead actress played a strong man and the lead actor played a good woman. Yeah, and I could see why someone might think that, because and I think that could be a criticism of the film, is that Ki Hui's character in the film, definitely in the main, because here's the thing people forget. In the main time arc, right, in the main universe, I guess you could say, he definitely comes across in certain respects as a beta. However, what I love about the film is that because there's a multiverse, one of the main helps that she has throughout the movie is her husband from another dimension, who is anything but beta. So that's how I think it's able to actually move past that typical trope that we see in a lot of Hollywood films. J.S. Pena, fun fact, James Cameron has directed a bad sequel before. The film is Piranha 2, The Spawning, although I'll come some slack that one because it was one of his first films. I didn't even know he had done a Piranha film. That is interesting. Master Game says, Jason Statham and Andy Garcia reteam with the Expendables 4 after Wrath of Man. What do you think of Andy Garcia in Wrath of Man? To be honest, I mostly have forgotten about his presence in that movie. I actually forgot he was in it. It's starting to come back to me a little bit now, because he kind of was playing almost like a Danny Ocean type character, similar to like Ocean's 11 in a certain respect. So I think that could definitely work to a certain degree. But the problem is that it's an Expendables movie, and I just do not think those are good. Zine Waters, Evan T, you didn't ask the guests to do that, so you've really nothing to apologize for. Gavin isn't even one of the hosts. Exactly. And again, no one asked him to do it, and no one was okay with it either. So, yeah, it's amazing just how many people are like, well, Laura says, yes, he died with his daughter there, but I'm sure he realized all the time that was lost with his family. And again, yes, I agree with that general assessment. The issue, though, is that up until the because where was all of, what was the key sin? It was pride. Right? It was pride. It was self-love, self-obsession. And he never gives that up. He never gives that up. And that's why, to me, he may have realized that, but he didn't actually learn anything. Because again, if he had learned something, it would not have been, hey, daughter, read this passage to me because it makes me feel really good. That's, again, everything about his decisions. Every decision he makes is, this makes me feel good. I eat all the time because this makes me feel good. I'm going to abandon my wife and child because this relationship makes me feel good, right? That is his key motivation until the very end, yeah. So that's why what I'm saying is, I can understand clearly he goes through this roller coaster of emotions, and and I'm sure he has some clarity, right? And maybe if that's how you interpret the ending with the light of him finally maybe realizing that, the problem is that there's nothing prior to that to say that that's what happens. It rather seems to imply he's been redeemed for being the same for the entirety of the movie, Anyway. All right. We'll do this comment, and then we'll jump into the next thing I want to talk about, which, of course, is Operation Fortune, and it's a great segue to that because Laura at 747 says, it was great to see Cary Elwes in Operation Fortune, but why was he always eating? That's a fair point. In the very beginning, he wasn't eating with a really great introduction with the walking. From the very beginning, and I guess let's go ahead and dive into it. So Operation Fortune, again, I have a review out on the channel, an instant reaction review that I was able to do from the theater because it was a theater that's like 30 minutes away from me. I actually was, in the car doing a car video review for it, so I got my instant reaction. This film was just, again, so fantastic. And I have to go back to this. The fact that they made Aubrey Plaza likable and actually very much a very fun, nuanced approach to her typical shtick. She's kind of known for doing the same thing in all the films that she does. And she's still herself in the movie, but she has this air of intelligence and this air also of sophistication that I feel like all the other roles she's portrayed lack. And so I have to give, obviously, a strong shout out to Guy Ritchie for both the writing and the direction to make Aubrey Plaza actually a very fun part of the movie. Like, one of the best parts of the movie was actually her performance. And I say that about pretty much everybody in there because everyone did a great job. Bugsy Malone, this was the actor who played JJ, the guy who I didn't remember and didn't know his name from the film. He has a lot of great one-liners in the movie that are just so funny. He's very stone-faced, just very mechanical, very good at his job as far as just, shooting and everything he does. But then also has a couple of moments. There's a great moment with wine with him. And if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. So, they're great at it. Hugh Grant, once again, is, stealing shows. But no one, I think, steals a show more than Josh Hartnett. Because, oh my goodness, Josh Hartnett. I haven't seen him in anything in a long time. Or at the very least, anything that I've really liked in a long time. And he is just phenomenal in the movie. And make sure you stick around. There's no end credit scene, but there is a sequence that plays as the first credits roll, and it is hysterical. And to see Josh Hartnett and Hugh Grant going back and forth was also just a lot of fun. So they did a great job casting, great direction, great writing. I saw Laura put this in the live chat. I love the fashion choices they made for Aubrey. Yeah, the costume design was also great too. Seriously, so good. And there really isn't a lot of bad things. I said that the two there's one bad thing that I remembered in my review, which was that the film could have been a little shorter. It's an hour and that's 114 minutes. I think that it could have been. I think they probably could have slimmed it up a little bit. Maybe take 10-15 minutes off. It's hard for me to think about sequences or scenes to cut. But somewhere in the middle, they could have done something to either speed things up, keep things going at the pace they started with, or cut just very small things. But other than that, the only other thing I had an issue with, and I remembered it as soon as I finished recording because that's typically how it happens. Randomly in the movie, there are two characters that get subtitles, and they're speaking in English. And my guess is that it's there because the director, I'm assuming Guy Ritchie, thought, maybe even a producer thought it was hard to understand what they were saying. But I was like, no, I can still understand everything that they're saying perfectly well, even with their accents. And it was specifically for Bugsy Malone's character, JJ, they put specifically when he is speaking on the phone, they'll switch back and forth between him, in person, and there's no subtitles. And then all you hear is his voice because he's speaking through the earpiece, and then the subtitles come in, and you're just like, what is this? And I thought, is this the only character that's going to get it for this one moment? And then a random character in the future gets it the entire time they're on screen, and it's because you actually are seeing the character speaking, and they're speaking English. That also, I was like, that's a weird choice. I don't know what went into that choice at all. I'd be fascinated to know why that was the case. But other than that, the film is just solid. Very, very solid. So I would definitely recommend people go to watch it. This is, for me, this year's The Gentleman. I think it's better than The Wrath of Man. So this is definitely, it feels a lot more like The Gentleman. So if you like The Gentleman and you were like, I kind of like Wrath of Man, or maybe you didn't like Wrath of Man, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. But But this to me is a little bit more like The Gentleman than Wrath of Man. But I still think it's yet again another continuation of this great streak that Guy Ritchie has as far as his films are concerned. Because, yeah, it's got the action thriller stuff, and it's got, again, it's not a comedy outright, but it's got some pretty great comedic moments. And I was in a theater that, even for seeing the movie at noon, it was mostly older audience. I mean, the theater was filled with like 10 people, which is a lot for, I think, noon during a weekday. And there was just a lot of laughter in several different parts of the film. So, yeah. Shout out to the entire team behind Operation Fortune, Roos de Guerre. So great. Again, Cary Elwes, fantastic. Aubrey Plaza, fantastic. Buzzy Malone, fantastic. Hugh Grant, Jason Statham, Josh Hartnett. I will say Jason Statham is still playing Jason Statham. There are differences in his character slightly, but ultimately it's played the same way. So that's not going to go anywhere. And I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. Jason Statham's never going to play someone that is just not him. Which is just hilarious to me. But because of the way his character is written and all the other things happening around him, it fits perfectly within the realm of the story. So shout out to Operation Fortune, film that should be making much more money at the box office. And if it's playing near you, I recommend that you go watch it. Greta, what's going on? Greta says, I know you didn't watch the Oscars, but I'm sure you'll be glad to hear there were mostly no politics except Jimmy Kimmel had to throw in a January 6th joke that fell flat. Yeah, and again, that might be true, but again, the Oscars just don't mean anything anymore. They used to, but they just don't anymore. And it really comes down to, okay, what have been the Best Picture winners for the last several years? Some people can maybe name them, but I think the one that really showcases how irrelevant the Oscars have become is there are actually two films. One I like, one I don't like. But do people remember Moonlight? No, people remember that they had announced La La Land and were actually mistaken, and it was supposed to be Moonlight. And then the other one is Green Book. I actually thought Green Book was good. Does anyone remember Green Book? Most people probably don't. That won Best Picture. So, and again, there's a lot of other things too, but the Oscars have just become so irrelevant that even saying, at least there were not a lot of politics in it, there doesn't have to be, because the irrelevancy has just been, the damage has been done. And I fear it's mostly irreparable. And I know that in previous years, you've at least stopped by, Greta. How dare you? How dare you? Laura, yeah, hopefully that made sense. Zine Waters, pride is often the sin lurking beneath. Really, it's pride is the key sin. All other sins, especially the deadly sins, all stem from pride. Hardwick, in my opinion, what matters is if an actor can fully look the part, even if it requires some makeup or hair dye, not whether they look the part already. Well, again, okay, you said that is your opinion. However, I do think that it is hypocritical to say, I don't like this character because it doesn't look anything like the character in the book or character in the history, but then you're going to take a key element of that, which was that she is a redhead, that she is a ginger, and then take an actress that is not ginger. To me, it's the same lines. It's hard for me to say, you again, doing both of those things. Harvey says, for instance, in Spidey movies, Kirsten Dunst is a blonde playing a redhead. Bryce Dallas Howard is redhead playing a blonde. They look natural as their skin tones and hair. And again, I would still say, I think if anyone was going to have a similar criticism, though, for those people being cast, I think as long as they're being consistent, I would be fine with that. Because here's the thing. I'm talking specifically about people who are going to be critical of it, but then not be consistent. That's the bigger issue, because I think you lack consistency if you are not holding the same standard to others. Steven says, your thoughts on Quentin Tarantino's last movie called The Movie Critic. What's your favorite Tarantino movie? Seeing that no trailer, to my knowledge, has been released and very little is known about it, it's Tarantino, so I assume that it's going to be great. Favorite movie of Tarantino? I think I've gotten this question before at some point, but I really like Hateful Eight for his more recent films. Hateful Eight is just fantastic. From his classics, Pulp Fiction is definitely up there too. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's a lot of fun as well. Yeah, and again, going back to what Laura said, costume design was great too, especially for Aubrey Plaza's character. Gary Banjo Sandwich says, Operation Fortune was long and I fell asleep, woke up, it was still on for another hour. slow fake action with no tension. Boo, Gary Banjo Sandwich. Boo. You probably watched it tired then, because from the very get-go with the walking on rhythm with the great score, it was great. Miss Minnesota fan, glad to see Operation Fortune is good. I will definitely check out when it becomes available to rent. I would recommend going to see it in theaters. It's great. Steven, when did you realize the show Collider was a shill show? For me, it was when Campy and Mark said, okay, Steven, rein it in, man. Rein it in. Lot of random questions. King and Rumsky, are you saying the Oscars are irrelevant because they choose poorly, or because movies are just bad in general and the Oscars are just a participation trophy award? More so the first one. Because here's the other thing too. You know what hasn't changed? The Oscars rules that are going to be going into effect, where you will have to fit diversity quotas in order to have any chance of being nominated. And I already know that they're not going to hold everyone to the same standard, because even within the rules themselves, they specifically designate that what is diverse in the Oscars' minds, in the Academy's minds, is that you have underrepresented groups, marginalized groups, which is why you could have a movie that has essentially an entirely black cast, black crew, and that film would still be up for contention, even though it is not being very inclusive, because it fits one of these categories and subcategories of their rules, because, oh, well, it's a marginalized group, and so therefore they don't have to follow the same standards as anyone else. Okay, that by its very nature is racist. The rules themselves that they've built into their Best Picture structure are racist to the very core of their existence and to their very being. So you have that in addition to all the other things that make it completely irrelevant. Greta says, I honestly thought it was a good award season this year, but that's my opinion. I agree other years sucked. And again, I will agree that there were a lot of good films and that there may have even been some good speeches. But the awards themselves just do not mean anything. And it's sad because, Brendan Fraser won an Oscar, and that used to mean something. But when you put him in the same category as some other people, where, again, because there have been those previous years, it means everything is tainted. Everything is just watered down. And so because of its watering down, even if things get better in the future, unless they basically said, all right, we need to do a hard reset, I don't really see a way for them to go forward. Kimmel also joked that anyone who committed assault would get an Oscar and allowed to give a 17-minute speech. Ugh, yeah, not very funny speech or funny line. Yeah. Steven, do you still think Super Mario Brothers is not going to pass $1 billion? I feel like I talk about this all the time because people always bring it up. But yeah, I'm still standing by that. It's going to do well. It's going to make a lot of money, but I don't think it's going to make $1 billion. General Wingster, do you know if The Gentleman is on any streaming service? For free, I don't know. What I will say, General Wingster, is it's worth getting on Blu-ray. It is worth getting on Blu-ray. Might as well. Brightburn, I know this is random, but I want to tell you something. There's a film called The Shadow. It has a really good song called Original Sin by Taylor Dane. Original Sin is an earworm. Interesting. Laura says, oh, maybe that is why Everything Everywhere squeezed the gay couple into the story at the end. It felt so unnatural, and one of my biggest complaints about it. Well, also, too, it's not necessarily at the very end, because from the very beginning of the movie, you know that her daughter is seeking acceptance by not just her, but also her family. So it was there from actually the very beginning. But yeah, I mean, it obviously does come to the forefront as a key part of the story towards the very end of it. And I think that's the reason why the story works mostly, because most of the movie is not about that. Most of the movie is more so about the relationship between daughter and mother, and the really interesting rules and dynamics of the multiverse as well. And then Greta says, have you seen the movie Tar with Cate Blanchett? Highly recommend. I've not. I've heard that she's great in it. I have not heard great things about the movie, but I've heard that she's great in it, and it's on my list of things to watch because it's on one of the streaming services that are there. So All right. Moving on to the next story as the chat catches up. And this is for Hardwick. As you all know, Hardwick is a member of the chat who drives me crazy often. But hey, much love to you, good sir. He recommended this one to me, though. He sent me some links, some information about it as well. I was actually able to get this and get it onto a Blu-ray and was able to watch it last night. And I was so intrigued by what was going on that I ended up watching the entire thing. I ended up watching both the discs last night. And it's still a long film, because they basically take the 3 films and then cut all those in half and then put them together. And obviously, that's still going to be a long time. But M4's The Hobbit book edits. So I think this might be one of the official sites for it. All I know is from what Hardwick said in his description, that it was from someone called M4. And so here, it looks like a blog post. Basically, it says, I felt like the trilogy, talking here about the Peter Jackson Hobbit trilogy, which was just terrible. But I felt that the trilogy had too much, whether it be all the side plots, CGI, action, or its overall length. I agree on all of those fronts. It had way too much of all of those things, and it just wasn't good. As a huge fan of the book, who also wanted to enjoy the film version, I decided to edit the movies down to fit with what Tolkien wrote, which coincided with rectifying all of said critiques. Not only did I make this project for purist Tolkien fans, but also for casual audiences who may prefer a more digestible and focused narrative regardless of the book. As a result, I have created a new presentation of what a standalone extended Hobbit movie could have been like, which I find to be more enjoyable and emotionally impactful adaptation for all audiences to enjoy. I started this project June 19th, 2019, where I initially edited the trilogy with the book at my side, page by page. Since then, the edit has gone through numerous revisions and adjustments to be as seamless and professional as possible until finally being completed as of December 24th, 2019. So this guy obviously put in years of work, 2.5 years of work to make this available. And again, he has mentions here about how to get access to it as well. But here were his goals. And this is where I find it very interesting before I talk about just the experience of watching the film itself. So the goals that he had for the edit process, he said, I wanted it to be more faithful to the Hobbit book while still being under Peter Jackson's vision. This includes making the film focus solely on the main quest without distracting side plots or side characters. So yeah, he does away completely with the Tauriel love story, with all of those side quests, all of those side plots that were all from, loosely based or partially based off of the indices of Tolkien. All that stuff is out. He says also decreasing the numerous references to Lord of the Rings films, allowing both stories to stand on their own. And I think that for the most part, he actually does that pretty well. I do think he makes some cuts here and there, though, that don't make a lot of sense. There's a fun line from one of the dwarves in the beginning that I liked a lot. It was like, I never understood exactly what he said, but he was like, I'm going to show him a bit of my Chauncey or something like that. And that line was cut. And there were other lines that were still kept in that I was like, of all the things to cut, you're leaving other things in joke-wise that are not necessarily in the or not necessarily in the books. But yeah, so I thought obviously, and again, he's an editor, so any editor is going to have their own bias there. It goes on, consistent tone as the story progresses from its lighthearted beginning to the more serious ending, with this a convincing atmosphere displaying more realistic combat, visuals, and physics is present throughout. This aids in allowing The Hobbit to transition more naturally into Lord of the Rings films from an atmospheric perspective. And I think for the most part he does that, except I do think he cuts out a little bit too much in some areas. For instance, the entire attack by Smaug on Lake Town is cut so much that it just felt very anticlimactic. And I think a lot of it's because of the fact that the CGI was just not very good for that entire sequence. So I understand trying to cut those things, and some of the subplots were also in that too. So there wasn't as much to work with, but I did feel like, okay, there's not nearly as much story here. And it felt like there was kind of a bit of a void. Goes on to say, execute with professional film editing techniques, specifically with making smooth audio transitions, maintaining a proper surround sound mix, and keeping intact the pacing, character arcs, and story structure. Work with lossless sources and avoid any unnecessary quality loss. And again, most part does this well, though there are some transitions that happen where it's not necessarily you notice any audio or visual issues. It's more of I feel like I've missed something, right? It feels like there is something missing from the story. And that happens a few times throughout the movie. So it's not a perfect cut, but it is very, very good nonetheless. So he does that pretty well. Stay in Middle Earth as long as possible with our beloved characters, meaning all available footage, theatrical, extended, and deleted, has been considered. And there are indeed a lot of things from the extras included in this, which I appreciated. Cutting characterization or book-accurate moments just for the sake of runtime is avoided. Hence, this edit is presented as its own extended edition that can fit well with any Middle-earth saga marathon, and I think that it definitely does. I would say most people would be happy watching this version if you wanted to then binge watch the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings. I think it would actually do a good job in transitioning over into that story, to a much better job than, of course, the originals, which is not too hard to do. But obviously he did a lot. And then he says, appeal to all movie fans, regardless of what their prior knowledge is with any of Middle-earth books or original films. Understanding the narrative should not depend on our other external material. And that might be why he left some lines in and then cut others out. But anyway, what I thought most fascinating about all of this, though, was this. Look at all of the things he cut. From the first film, he cut 40% of the movie. From the second film, and this one, again, you could feel, he cut almost 60% of the film. And then from the last one, he cut 54%. So he cut almost half of every movie and then put them together. He then also used Howard Shore's score. So obviously, he changed some of the score elements at certain points. The Battle of the Five Armies Appendices, Part 11. So I guess that's probably from like some extended cut. Hobbit Complete Recordings, Fan Project. That's cool. Various free and self-recorded sound effects. Okay, nice. That's actually pretty cool. Pretty cool to see that happen. The end result, though, is a 4-hour and 5-minute movie. 51% of the original 8 hour and 51% of the original 8 hours and 19 minutes have been cut. And then if you want to know more about the overall changes, again, he goes through this. He changes the color grading to make it look more like it is natural film rather than looking very artificial. That I thought was actually a really nice touch because it did look so much better. It looked so much more natural in that way. And I thought that was actually a really good job. And again, it goes through all the other things he does. Also, he includes much less of the Goblin City, much less of Goblin Town, but then also includes the song, which I thought was fun to hear. And again, tons of other stuff as well. So if you are someone where you really loved the Lord of the Rings movies and then you were really disappointed by the Hobbit films, but maybe you didn't hate them outright, or there were a couple of things here and there that you enjoyed, like maybe some of the actors or the casting, I think you should definitely check this out. Again, it's M4's The Hobbit Book Edit. If you are on the Discord giveaway server, meaning you are a member of the Keeper of the Bifrost on Patreon, Subscribe, Star, or Locals, right now there is an active giveaway. I'm probably going to be giving away probably a few sets of this because I thought it was that good. So I might try and do some giveaways in the future on this channel as well. And for those that might be interested. So if you think that you have the technical ability to seek this out for yourself, go ahead and do so. If not, then hey, at least you know about it now. So again, shout out to Hardwick for letting me know about that because it ended up being a pretty fun experience. And a heck of a lot better than the originals. All right, going back to Victor Fontaine. It says here, Guy Ritchie is hit or miss for me. For movies like The Gentleman, Man from U.N.C.L.E. or Snatch, I liked it. Then they're swept away, King Arthur, Revolver, and Aladdin. Yeah, I mean, I only saw a little bit of King Arthur and was not a big fan of it. I honestly feel like it might be how much control he has and also the producers he's working with as well, right? So if he has a lot of control, I feel the films tend to be really good. If he's working with producers that have more control, but they're good at their job, I think that could also be good. So, for instance, Man from U.N.C.L.E., I don't know how much control he had, but something tells me that the studio may have had a little bit more of control there, just the way that the movie felt. But it's still really good. So I think that ultimately it is a very good thing that Guy Ritchie, for the most part, I think he is much more hit than he has missed. And over recent years, and we could talk, I mean, I know Aladdin wasn't that far long ago, but even though Aladdin is garbage and is terrible, I don't honestly question how much involvement he had in that movie. I do not believe that he had full control of that project. It just, you look at all of his other films, and then you look at that, and you're like, okay, one thing is clearly not like the other. But yeah, Gentleman, phenomenal. Wrath of Man is also very solid too. The opening sequence to Wrath of Man is fantastic. It's not as strong as The Gentleman as an entire film, but it's still a pretty strong movie. We haven't even gotten The Covenant this year yet, and that's on my most anticipated movies list. So if this one, which was like, it just randomly got released, I think it was originally supposed to get released in 2022 and then got delayed, but then it got moved up. Again, all these films have been kind of like bobbled all over the place, or maybe it was never intended to get a domestic theatrical release. I'm so happy it did, though. I thought the film was just fantastic. It was great. Steven says, did you get to see The Passion of Christ in theater? Yeah, I did actually, and it was very powerful. I don't really remember everything about my experience because it's hard to imagine that film came out as long ago as it did. I mean, again, it's just insane to think that film came out in 2004. So that was when I was still in high school. I would have been a sophomore. Yeah, I would have been a sophomore, junior in high school. Like a sophomore going into my junior in high school. So I was not nearly as firm in my faith. I was definitely not a traditionally minded Catholic at that time. I had never heard of the Latin Mass at that point. I knew very little about traditional practices at all. Faith was starting to become kind of the thing I was starting to take on my own. But oh my goodness, yeah, I just remember though it being very powerful for me, even back then. And since then, I've watched it every year because I watch it every year for Easter multiple times because I show it to all of my classes. I show it to all of my religion classes. Last year was the first year actually where I had a student that actually had to leave because of how intense it is. And it is very, very intense. But it was just very weird because I was like, oh man, you're actually leaving? This is a new experience for me. Hardwick says, watching The Shadow nowadays might feel a little unnerving since it features Alec Baldwin. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, now that you mentioned Alec Baldwin, I've seen clips of it. And I wasn't impressed. Laura says, The Gentleman is on Netflix, and I was talking about the Jamie Lee Michelle Yeoh couple. I completely forgot about the daughter. Oh, yes. I see. You forgot about the daughter. I completely forgot about Jamie Lee and Michelle Yeoh. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree. But then again, even though I have issues with various things in the movie, at least for the most part, most of them fit the multiverse narrative, General Wingster, Odin, I wouldn't mind doing laundry and tax with you. Oh, General Wingster, you are a poet, good sir. Did you write that all by yourself? Let's see. Kinky and Rumsky over on Rumble says, are you saying the Oscars? Oh, sorry, I got that one already. Thank you. By the way, Abomination, thank you for hanging out on Odyssey. Kinky and Rumsky, thanks for holding down the fort on Rumble as well. And again, if you're on any of the platforms, you have questions, put at Odin at the very beginning of your comment. Let's see. Zion Water says, a Hobbit edit. I check it out. Some of the additions are in the lore, but not in the book. But most were nothing like the lore. Exactly. Right. There were things that were like, oh yeah, it's in the lore. But then you're like, yeah, maybe the character name or description, but then you're just going off and doing your own thing with it, And then I believe the character of Tariel was just completely made up because they wanted to have a strong female Arwen-like character, and they wanted to have a romance for some reason. And again, I'm probably oversimplifying it, but good Lord. Hardwick says, the discs also have bonus features, including an audio commentary in which M4 explains all of his editing decisions. Okay, yeah, I did see there were some special features. I know that disc 1 features, was it like the White Council, which I believe is, which I don't know if I've ever seen that sequence before, where it's, I believe, when Thorin comes in for the first time, one of the things he mentions is that he's late because he had to meet with the other dwarf lords and talk about whether or not they would support them in their mission to go to the Lonely Mountain and to retake the mountain. And, eventually they shut him down. So I believe that's what it is. And so obviously I have to check that out as well. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this recut. Let's see. Steven Titus say, do you think Hollywood will make a movie solely due to actor, actress, for example, Keanu Reeves? They already have. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent featuring Nicolas Cage. Laura, I love that Guy Ritchie did with Sherlock. Oh, I did too. I think that the first one is much better than the second one, but both of them have a very unique feel. It's a very Guy Ritchie feel, I guess you could say. And I do still like the second one. Harvey says, did you notice that some of the changes in M4's book edit required special effects work? There's a video on YouTube showing some of the visual effects made for the edit. Yeah, I was trying to look for that. I was trying to see I wonder if they try to add things that were not previously there. And so I didn't notice them right away. I kind of wish that he somehow was able to go in and improve some of the visual effects, even for very small things, right? So for one, I would like for any time they're smoking a pipe for it to not look like clearly CGI smoke. I mean, you're talking to someone who's straight edge and I hate smoking, but it's don't do the whole CGI smoke because it doesn't look good, right? The part especially where you have in Gandalf him being asked about how many dragons he's killed, and he's choking on himself because he obviously hasn't any experience whatsoever, and it just looks really bad. Also, I really wish that he would have also taken out the sequence of him getting really angry and doing the because that was something where it's no, you're just trying to do a throwback and a callback to the trilogy, which I guess maybe he kept in because that was a Peter Jackson decision, so it fit within what he was trying to do, and everything else about it, the sequence as far as the lines, etc., were all within the framework he was working in, would be my guess. But Orange Hat says, when I watched Wrath of Man, I didn't know it was a Guy Ritchie film until I saw the film style. It is very reminiscent of his Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. The style is almost beat for beat. Yeah. Master Gaming, I love the first Shazam, yet I have no interest in the sequel. Can't wait for your review of Cocaine Bear and Shazam 2. I love your videos. Thank you very much, Master of Gaming. And yeah, I mean, Shazam is not looking very good at all. It's not looking like that film is going to make really much of anything at the box office. I mean, let's go ahead and do this real quick since it wasn't in the title, but since a question was asked about it. So coming from Deadline, Shazam's looking at an $85 million worldwide, not domestic, worldwide debut. It's expected to make $35 million from the domestic market. That is abysmal. That is awful. Based off of that, let's go ahead and see. Overall, both overseas and domestic, Shazam 2 is bound to see a lower start than the 2019 original. And again, lower start, meaning when you adjust for inflation, it's going to be even worse. 53.5 million domestic for the first film, unadjusted. 102 million worldwide, unadjusted for the first one. So this film is already going to come in underneath it. And that's what drives me crazy is because the first one's really good. I think the reason why this film's coming in underneath is for multiple reasons. One, the DCEU has just been garbage for a long time, and I think ultimately they crapped the bed. And I think everything now DCEU related is just going to be toxic to some degree. But then also the trailers for this movie have been terrible. I was originally interested in this movie until the first trailer came out, and when the trailer came out and I was like, ooh, that CG, I was like, all right, I'm out. Steven says, back in the day before movie seats, did you ever have a funny experience sneaking into a movie room early or cutting in front of the line to grab a good seat before the movie started? No, I actually only ever outright snuck into a movie one time when I was younger. And it was to go see the Disney Haunted Mansion movie with Eddie Murphy because it was sold out. My girlfriend at the time had gotten a ticket early to go see it, and obviously I wanted to go see it with her. And it was funny because it was sold out, oversold. People were sitting actually on the stairs, and it was so bad they had to get managers and supervisors to come in. and they swept through the first 5 rows and were asking people to show their tickets, and they kicked out so many people that it was enough to where they did not get to my row, and I actually was able to go see it. So, obviously I've done the razzle dazzle where you buy a ticket to one, you go to another, but I've never had to sneak in early to get a good seat or anything like that. I very early, because I was seeing a lot of movies when I was in high school. So I knew, okay, no, we have to get here an hour early to get our tickets, to get a good seat in order to go see this movie. I was very well aware of kind of what to do. Great Widow says, thanks to Operation Fortune, I think I found a quote that I'm going to nominate for the 2024 Raven Awards. Boom, that's awesome. Yeah, and I know that some people will say, why don't you just open up the nominations now? Part of the problem with doing that would be, 1, people forgetting whether or not they voted, and 2, it would open up for shenanigans of people trying to influence the vote, things like that. But Zion says, Toriel was 100% made up. I actually liked her in the romance, though. Hated the love triangle. I know that's an unpopular opinion. I'm a sucker for sweet romances. Hey, I'm a sucker for the sweet romances, too, and I would have liked it had I not grown up with my dad reading me The Hobbit. So that's why I was like, I'm just not digging this, because the actress is great. I thought the actress did a fine job. She was fine. And I thought the actor playing the dwarf in the relationship was fine too. But yeah, the triangle was stupid, and because it was completely made up, I immediately just, blah. Harvey says the White Council is a re-edited version of the scenes of Gandalf meeting with Galadriel, Saruman, and Elrond. Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was actually... It's interesting that that's included, and I'm happy to hear it's re-edited. I actually want to see it now, because when that happened, I was like, look, I'm happy to be seeing these actors on screen together, but what in the world is this? Steven says, it's quiet, too quiet. Be careful, it's a trap. Hardwick, The Shadow was part of a cycle of early 90s movies inspired 1930s pulp. Others included Rocketeer, Dick Tracy, Fandom. I love the Fandom. Fandom was great. Great fun. Laura says, a dragon in Shazam 2. How original. I know, right? Laura then says, when I was 16, my friends and I snuck into Purple Rain, one of my best memories. Nice. Master Gaming. Shazam cost $100 million to make. Yep. So that means its break even is $250 million. And it's opening up to 85. Nope. That gonna flop. Steven, best midnight movie experience. You mentioned one of them, Dark Knight. Got to see Dark Knight with a group of really good friends. Got there early. It was a lot of fun. Also, some of the Harry Potters because of friends. The later movies, most of them weren't as good as some of the earlier ones, but yeah. Harvey says, do you agree with the view that Warner Brothers giving away the Wonder Woman cameo in the trailer is a sign of desperation? Oh, for sure. I mean, there's no other way to really view that, because some people are going to defend it to say, well, of course she's going to be involved. Think about who the villains are. The problem is that if that was the case, they would have had her in the trailer from the very beginning. So it's clear to me they saw the numbers, they saw the projections, and said, we need to do everything that we can. And they were probably hoping that would be a fun surprise, a fun cameo appearance, a fun, twist and turn. And they were going to try to hold on to that one. And then they realized we need everything that we can to try to sell tickets to this. The problem that I have with that mindset, though, is if they recognize that Gal Gadot has a chance of selling more tickets, why in the heck did they decide to give the reins over to James Gunn, who is gutting the best parts of what the DCEU has? And like some of the best parts that they have is the casting of Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot, and then also the casting of Superman and Henry Cavill. But I digress. Victor Fontaine says, Odin, your John Wick 4 movie ticket is on me, or put it towards your next bucket of movie popcorn. Well, it's going to be another month before I have movie popcorn again, since it's Lent, and that's kind of a part of the things that I'm not. But thank you very much for paying for the ticket. Though even then it's tricky because I already have my one. I have the AMC A list, so I already get the movies, and then I also have my movie pass, which I was actually able to use at the UEC. So yeah, nice little. And I've only seen a couple of movies so far with Movie Pass, and what I can say, it works. So if you've been wondering about Movie Pass, It does work. There are a few different tiers. The $10 a month tier gives you about 30 credits. Just for reference, if you go to see a weekday movie, it's 10 credits. So if you go see 3 weekday movies in a month, you can go see 3 movies in a month for $10. So that's actually pretty good. You're saving money there. It's about 20 credits for a premium show. And then there's also one where it's 15 credits. But yeah, so if you only see a month, like 1 or 2 movies a month, I think it's worth getting for the $10 a month. For the $20 a month, you get about 74, 73 credits. And obviously you can do a lot more with that. And your credits to a certain number actually roll over if you don't use them, which I like. But I do wish it was, a bit more than that. But yeah, MoviePass actually does work. I've checked into 2 theaters and it has worked for me. But obviously, when it comes to MoviePass, they are still not to be fully trusted, and I can understand if you're not. But I can say I bought the bullet, I got it early, and the 2 times that I've used it, it has worked. All right, bringing subjects back full circle. Evangeline Lilly as Tariel was a brunette playing a redhead. Well, there you go. And again, I don't have a problem with that. But if you are the type of person that has an issue with casting and someone matching the casting of a character, I do think that and again, I would put myself to the same standard as well. And there's been times where I've done it before, then I would call myself out too. Anyway, Steven, what's your favorite AMC snacks? Oh yeah, I can't do mac and cheese bites. I don't think I ever had those. Even we didn't have those when I was working at AMC. When I was working at AMC, I actually really liked the pizzas. Those were great. But as far as what I buy for a movie, obviously popcorn, butter with salt, and also, my favorite actual candy, though, are Junior Mints. Love Junior Mints. Soul Assassin, MoviePass or Multipass? Multipass. No, obviously MoviePass. But anyway, yeah, Republic credits will do fine. King and Rumsky over on Rumble says, I assume you think James Gunn will be a failure at WB. I just think it's not even that he's going to be a failure. I just don't think with what they have coming out this year, I think The Flash is going to be an unmitigated disaster. They have no jumping off point. And James Gunn made one really good film in the first Guardians. He hasn't really done much since. And I know some people like Guardians 2. It's not rewatchable. Some people might like even The Suicide Squad. I don't know why or how. It's a terrible movie. But it's like, what have you done for me lately, Mr. Gunn? With that being said, though, we are at time and actually just a couple minutes over. So thank you all very much for joining me on this Welcome to Asgard podcast. Stay tuned for this coming Friday where we will have Friday Night Tights. And don't worry, there will not be nudity. We can confirm that with our guest, Benny Johnson. So be ready for that. And also, some people might be a little wary because it seems like we're having 2 guests in a row that are more politically minded, but just remember that Benny Johnson's also a nerd, so he'll be able to talk about culture war stuff and the typical culture stuff that we do bring up. So do be ready for a fun show this coming Friday. And then on Saturday, of course, we will have we should be able to have the Saturday evening stream. It might get canceled because my mom is coming in this coming weekend. But typically around that time, after baby Thor goes to bed, normally she's exhausted as well. So again, I'll keep y'all posted on that one. But I will probably still be able to... actually, no, scratch that, reverse it. There's a party that I'm going to, so we'll probably have to cancel Saturday night stream. So I'll let y'all know one way or the other if it's going to be a go or if it's going to be canceled. But again, Friday Night Tights. Saturday, I think I'll still be able to have time to do the Salty Saturday Morning podcast. So check out Salty Nerd Podcast. And I've been doing the Salty Mornings on Saturdays there, which is a lot of fun. In 2 weeks on Saturday, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, we will have our Chosen of Valhalla stream from 1 to 3. So look forward to that. And yeah, look forward to more reviews on the channel. I'm going to try and one of the mornings this week get up early so that I can do a full box office preview for this coming weekend with DC's Shazam, set to be a box office flop, looking also into ticket sales and adjustment for inflation numbers in some of the in some of the competitions between films within the same franchise. And yeah, should be a lot of fun. Anyway, Hardwick, to reiterate, I think what angers is most when people are cast who can't look the part even with the hair dye or makeup. But again, there's so many problems with that, Hardwick, man. Star Wolf or Star Fox? Star Fox. Minnesota Hockey fan, how about Hockey Player? Orange Hat, oh, keep me in your prayers. Got a kidney stone that is flaring up. Oh, no. I've heard, the equivalency I've heard is it's like an alligator taking a giant bite into your side. So I hope and pray that you're able to get through that quickly. General Wingster, bring your mom on the show. She would not have any idea what's going on, and I don't think she'd want to. Dan Crane, thank you again for being here. God bless you. God bless you. And yeah, everyone, thank you so much again for being here. Shout out to Laura, the Modern Major General, and also to Orange Hat Reviews. And again, prayers out to Orange Hat Reviews and anyone who has asked for prayers most recently. Shout out to the Odyssey fam, to the Rumble fam, and thank you very much, Victor Fontaine, for donating for the stream this evening. Thank you again. Have a wonderful, blessed rest of your Lent, if you are indeed celebrating Lent or doing something similar. I think I'm going to go try and see one what the wife's doing. And if not, if she's, she's obviously she's also very tired, since we are, I know it's been mentioned previously, but we are expecting our second. We just found out a couple weeks ago, but keep her in your prayers as well, obviously. First trimester is usually the most dangerous, so keep her in your prayers. And also, I will say this as well. If y'all could also keep a good friend of mine in your prayers, Ryan, his wife Sarah, recently passed away from cancer. And this is actually not too long after she had given birth. So please pray for him. He's a traditional Catholic with therefore also a very large family as well. So if you could just keep him in your prayers, I would really appreciate that. Sorry to kind of bring things down on a very sour note, but it is something that I've been wanting to mention a lot. And obviously there are never too many prayers. So if you could just keep them in your prayers as well, I would very much appreciate that. So with all that being said, thank you again for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon, Subscribe Star, and local members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Chris from the 80s, who can check out over his YouTube channel by the same name, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Hat Reviews, who can check out over at his YouTube channel, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, Miss Martin Muses, and you can check her out at her YouTube channel by the same name also. To my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, you can check out over at his Twitch channel, Matt317, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can find out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me at the Patreon level, Subscribe Star level, and locals level of Keeper the Bifrost and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description to find out more ways that you can support the channel, including ways to get access to a podcast and also ways to get access to giveaways that I do on the channel, and also, of course, to my coveted Chosen of Valhalla level as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.